Here's why Johnny Depp could succeed in his defamation appeal against the $2 million payment to Amber Heard. Heard, however, countersued Depp for 3 claims made by Adam Waldman, Depp's attorney, in a string of Daily Mail pieces. Depp was found not guilty of defamation for the first 2 utterances, but was found guilty for the third. As a result, he was sentenced to pay Heard $2 million in compensatory damages, but no punitive damages. Depp denies that he is liable for defamation as a result of a comment his lawyer made to the press, albeit he reasonably wants the majority of the decision upheld. Let's examine the appeal's specifics and the strength of his case. The Waldman statements are a number of declarations given by Adam Waldman, who served as Depp's attorney when he sued The Sun in the UK for wrongly calling him a wife-beater. In April 2020, many statements Waldman made to the Daily Mail regarding litigation that was still pending in the UK were reported online. Heard countersued Depp for defamation based on 3 assertions, claiming that since Waldman was acting as his agent as Waldman's client, Depp should be held vicariously accountable. The jury decided in favor of Depp after finding that Heard had not proven all elements of slander in relation to 2 remarks made by Waldman that Heard and her friends had concocted an abuse hoax in order to frame Depp. They determined that Amber Heard and her friends in the media employ phony sexual violence charges as both a sword and a shield, depending on their requirements, was the first claim to be untrue. They chose a few of her sexual assault phony facts to use as the sword and inflicted them on the public and Mr. Depp, according to an article that ran in the Daily Mail on April 8, 2020. We have reached the beginning of the end of Ms. Heard's abuse hoax against Johnny Depp, according to Waldman's April 27, 2020 article statement. The jury determined that Heard had not met the burden of proving the elements of defamation. The following, much more explicit statement made by Waldman to the Daily Mail on April 27, 2020, is when things take a turn. Simply said, this was a fraud and an ambush. The initial attempt at setting up Mr. Depp by calling the police failed. Amber and her friends then spilled a little wine, roughed up the place, got their stories straight, and then made a second call to 911, the author continues. The jury determined that Waldman made the statement while acting as Depp's agent, that it was false, defamatory, and that it was made with actual malice. Many people who watched the trial from home were baffled as to why the jury found Depp not guilty on 1 remark, but guilty on 2 charges of making identical statements about a hoax. The specificity of the unverifiable assertions in this 3rd statement is what got Waldman into problems, despite the fact that the jury strongly sided with Depp and did not trust Heard's account. Unlike the preceding remarks, Waldman doesn't merely make generalizations or vague assertions. Here, he accuses Heard and her pals in detail of calling a lawyer, trashing the location, spilling wine, practicing their statements, and then making another 911 call. Waldman had a good reason to think those claims were accurate, but he was never summoned to testify at the trial, so the jury never heard proof that the claims weren't fabricated intentionally or on Depp's orders, let alone if Depp was even aware of them. In a 20-minute deposition that was pre-recorded and given to the jury, Waldman repeatedly asserts his attorney-client privilege and declines to respond to any of the defense counsel's inquiries. Unless the client voluntarily waives the privilege, Waldman is required by law to take this action to protect his client's legal privilege. The jury held Depp legally liable for remarks regarding Amber Heard made by his lawyer, not Depp, in the UK newspaper The Daily Mail in April 2020. Depp, however, makes a number of claims in his appeal that the jury erred because of several mistakes that were committed during the trial. 3 mistakes, according to Depp's team, led to this decision. The first is that Heard lacked sufficient evidence to support her claims, so Judge Ascarrett should not have rejected his motions for summary judgment and moved to strike evidence. Second, Depp argues that it was wrong for the judge to reject his proposed jury instructions 22, 23, and 24. Third, the judge erred by removing the majority of the story's background from the Daily Mail. Depp cites a number of defenses for why Heard's defamation claims against him should not subject him to legal liability for Waldman's remarks. First off, Depp argues that Waldman can't be held accountable for his words because he is an independent contractor and not an employee. The majority of the nation's jurisdictions have established legal precedents that define attorneys as independent contractors. Waldman has his own business and handles a variety of customers in addition to Mr. Depp. Up until Heard filed her countersuit against him in 2020, Depp claims he had no influence over Waldman and was unaware that she had ever said anything to the Daily Mail. Depp contends that his request to dismiss Ms. Heard's counterclaim ought to have been granted because the vicarious culpability standard was upheld as the jury's instructions simply because Waldman was Depp's attorney, and not because Depp gave him any instructions to make allegations about Ms. Heard. Because they utilize their own judgment while representing a client and are bound to legal ethical standards independent of the client's own interests, lawyers are rarely regarded as workers. Second, it was Heard's responsibility to show that Waldman acted with genuine malice. This is a crucial component of establishing defamation, but no such proof was ever offered. as a public figure trying to prove they were defamed. Heard needed to prove that Waldman acted with actual malice by making or publishing statements that he had subjective knowledge that was false or acted with reckless disregard for whether it was false or not. Not only did Ms. Heard never present evidence that Waldman doubted he believed the statements to be false or ever entertained serious doubt as to their truthfulness, but Depp maintains that Waldman believes the statements to be true and has testified at length about the reason why he believes Heard's allegations to be false and a hoax. In previous testimony, Waldman referred to inconsistencies in her story, testimony from witnesses that contradict her claims, and even filed a claim with the LAPD alleging that Ms. Heard had committed perjury by falsely claiming that Depp had abused her. Waldman supplemented this filing with evidence he believed supported this claim. The jury might be misled into believing that the Waldman statement was a factual assertion rather than a well-reasoned theory of a contentious legal dispute in which both sides were presented and which discusses events that Waldman did not claim to have witnessed. This is because all text other than the statement in question was redacted. Instead, he offered his version of how the situation would have played out and reasoned that Amber Heard was perpetrating a fraud against Johnny Depp based on his own collection of facts. Other Waldman quotations were offered, such as "but even this didn't have the expected impact because two domestic abuse-trained LAPD detectives would later provide a pair of sworn depositions declaring they saw no proof of a crime." The report also included Heard's perspective on the events and labeled Waldman's claims as fantasies. If it is obvious that the speaker is expressing a subjective view, an interpretation, a theory, conjecture, or surmise, rather than claiming to be in possession of objectively verifiable facts, the law states that even a statement that can be proven to be false is not actionable. Depp argues that it was incorrect of the judge to reject his proposed jury instructions 22, 23, and 24. These directions would have clarified to the jury what an independent contractor is, and what is necessary to lawfully hold Mr. Depp accountable for his lawyer's claims. Jury instruction number 22 stated that Waldman should be treated as an independent contractor if the jury determined that Depp did not directly control the way, how, or by what means he worked for Depp. An outside attorney hired by a client in connection with litigation is an independent contractor, according to instruction 23. A person who engages an independent contractor is not responsible for their acts, according to instruction 24. Together, these instructions show how Depp could not be held accountable for Waldman's actions if the jury determined that he was an independent contractor rather than an employee of Depp. Now that we are familiar with the facts of the case and Depp's arguments, what are his actual chances of successfully challenging this finding of fact? Even if Depp wants to provide evidence that proves the Waldman assertions are entirely true, appeals only deal with the evidence that has been presented in court. He is unable to do so, and doing so will not strengthen his case as they were not mentioned during the trial. Christopher Melcher, a well-known celebrity divorce lawyer, looked over the case on Popcorn Planet and thinks Depp's strongest argument relates to the jury's faulty instructions. It is impossible to exaggerate the significance of jury instructions. The jury is instructed to treat the evidence and apply the legal standard in this manner. The instructions given to a jury can make or break an entire case. Melcher contends that because the jury was only told that Depp could be held accountable for Waldman's statements if he was acting as an agent and if he had expressly or implicitly implied that they were defamatory, authority to assert that there was insufficient information provided for the jury to comprehend the applicable legal norm. The jury's instructions further define an agent, saying that they are the individual who is subject to a principal's power or right to control the means and methods of doing the task. This instruction is identical to the ones Depp's team had suggested, but Melcher isn't sure if they were sufficiently clear for the jury to comprehend how they would be used in a client-lawyer relationship. If the appellate court rules that the jury should have been told that attorneys are treated as independent contractors since they choose how they would represent their clients on their own, Depp might prevail. Melcher thinks Depp's other defenses are weaker, and even the